Okay, so a little bit more officially, welcome everybody to our second event of our professional learning programme. Really pleased you can join us, and welcome if you're just joining us. I can see a few people are flying in at the moment. We're very pleased and privileged to have Bethan Milton and Thomas Rose with us today, and they're going to just give us an overview of any changes and how you can best implement and use the consistent performance measures to support improvement within your schools. So welcome both, and thank you for presenting today.
Thank you. I'll just try and share my screen. So hopefully everybody can see the slides, yeah?
Yeah, perfect, okay? Thanks.
Right, so a big thank you to Emma and to Sian for inviting us to talk to you today about the consistent performance measures. Today's session is focusing on the achievement measure and the reports that you get each year from us. And myself and Thomas will go through and give you an idea of how you interpret those reports, so how you can use those reports within your own organisations. So as introduction, my name's Beth Milton and I work on the policy side. I'm the policy lead for the performance measures, and I'm joined today by my colleague Thomas Rose, who's the statistician that actually issues and produces the performance measures. So he's going to take you through the more technical stuff, and hopefully between us both then you'll get a good idea of how you can use the data that we issue on an annual basis. So as I say, I'm just going to give an overview of the consistent measures, just a reminder really of what the consistent measures are, how long they've been around, and all of the background information. And then I'll hand over to Thomas then, who will go through the actual reports in detail and explain a bit more about what those reports are showing and what you should be looking at within your own organisations. Hopefully you've all seen the reports that are issued, and if after this meeting you sort of go back and you have a look at your own reports and then are not sure about something, then please feel free to email us after the meeting with your specific questions if we're unable to answer them today, and then we'll help you then as much as we can. Ask us anything, no questions too stupid. This is a safe space, so anything that you want to ask, then please feel free. Either put it in the chat bar or raise your hand, whichever you're most comfortable with, and myself and Thomas will do our best to answer the questions. So as a quick refresher then, the consistent measures cover further education and sixth forms, basically because you both deliver the same programme, so mainly A levels, AS levels, and some vocational. So before the consistent measures were introduced, there was no common way of us measuring outcomes for learners, because the one set of the data for schools was looked at by one team, and then the data for FE institutions was looked after by another team. So the measures have been in place from the 2016-17 academic year, and as I say, they've given us really the first chance to look at things in a consistent way across the post-16 sector. So for the achievement measures, they've replaced the legacy measures, which were the threshold measures, the two A levels at A star to E. So this we try to develop a suite of measures that give us a more rounded picture of outcomes for learners. So as a reminder, the three measures that we have are achievement, which looks at the programmes for Welsh Baccalaureate and AS and vocational programmes, and looks at both retention and achievement as well. Then we've got value added, which looks at what learners achieve over and above what's expected of them based on their prior attainment and other characteristics. That's currently on hold at the moment because the contract came to an end with Fisher Family Trust, and also the issues around COVID, not having all of the data that we needed. We're not looking to reintroduce something until the 24-25 academic year at the latest. And we also want to have a look at whether the contextual demographic benchmarks that Thomas will go on and explain a bit more about later, what they, whether they can be used as gives us the same information that we would have had with the value added. So that's something we'll be sort of be looking for feedback from yourselves, from Estin and from the colleges as well, to see whether it gives us the same sort of details that we had from the previous measure. And then the final measure is destinations, which looks at the progression of learners once they finish their learning programme. So whether they stay within education, so they have move on to higher or same level learning, or whether they go on to employment, or so we match the data with the DWP data as well. So as I say, we're focusing today on just the achievement measure. If you feel you'd want something similar on the destinations measure, then we can certainly look to do that going forward. So as I said, the achievement measure it incorporates retention as well as the gaining of qualifications. It's a 2-year measure, so it looks at the learners that start an AS programme, that go on to complete their A2 programme, and what outcomes they achieve at the end of it. So we're looking at whether they achieve 3 A levels or equivalent. So equivalence could be a vocational qualification, or it could also be the Skills Challenge certificate part of the Welsh Baccalaureate. So we look at those that start the AS programme, who goes on then to complete the A2 programme, and then what out of those, how many achieve the 3 A levels or equivalents. So it gives us a bit more of a nuanced approach to just looking at those that actually enter for the examination. So it gives us a bit more a feel for retention, who's staying on for the full 2 years, because generally the ones that start an A-level programme have the intention of staying to the end. We know that that doesn't always happen, and can be for reasons beyond, you know, the learners themselves, but it just gives us a bit more of a nuanced set of data. And it also then will allow for those learners dropping 1 A level because of the Welsh BAC, the Skills Challenge certificate, also acting as an equivalent. So at the moment, hopefully you'll be in the throes of submitting your post-16 data collection. This is data that's collected in September and October each year for the previous academic year. It's this data that we use to actually calculate the measures. So as you can imagine, it's very important that the data that you submit is as accurate as it possibly can. So as part of the data collection process there, we've developed 2 reports which look at validation and summary data. So it enables you to have a look of a quick snapshot to see whether the data that you're submitting as part of this collection is accurate. It gives you information on the programmes that the learners are following, and that sort of information. So the DEWI summary and validation report can be accessed from the DEWI system. And as you can see, there's a screenshot there that shows exactly where you can actually download that report. I understand that you can only download it once you've submitted the data to your local authority. So it's then you can sort of go back to them and say, yeah, that, you know, we've got 27 learners in year 13, and those are reflected in the data that's been submitted. So it gives you a quick snapshot and an ability to validate the data that you've submitted to us. So the summary report gives a raft of information. So you've got the pupils registered on roll by their age group, their gender, and their year group. Those that are studying for the Welsh Baccalaureate, learners with learning difficulties and or disabilities, and the numbers of pupils doing specific learning activities, so your A levels, your vocational, again split by gender and year group. So it gives you a whole raft of information that you can look at, and it gives you a chance to check that the data submitted is accurate. Excuse me. So this is the DEWI validation report, and the first page, as you can see, lists all of the different programmes that learners can follow within this sixth form, and gives you the numbers that you've recorded against each one. So again, gives you a snapshot. The total line at the bottom then gives you the total numbers of learners that should reflect the learners that you've got in year 12 and year 13. So again, a quick snapshot for you to be able to check that the data is accurate. The second page then gives information on the Welsh Baccalaureate in year 12 and year 13, and also details of the AS and the A2 programmes, and sort of calculates the completion rate for you. So again, gives you a feeling of whether what you've submitted are right or not. So I'm going to stop here. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll hand over to Thomas then, and he'll take you through the reports in more detail and show you what sorts of things you should be looking out for and how to interpret that in your own college and school, sorry.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Let me just get to the right place. So I'm going to take you through what the actual spreadsheet that you receive looks like. So this is the general education program report that we have here. The first thing to note about it is that we talk about A levels and equivalent. So these are qualifications which are the same in volume and level to an A level. So they include BTECs and Advanced Skills Challenge Certificate taken as part of a general education program. They are, so in the data, the grey bars are the national outcomes for Wales, and that includes sixth forms and colleges. And the white rows are the data for your own provider. Here we can see it's a particularly large provider, 500 learners. It's made up data though. The most important thing to understand is this learners at 8-week point. The basis for all the measures is the number of learners who are on their AS 8 weeks in. This is to give some flexibility, chance for learners to move around and find the program that's right for them. If they move in the first 8 weeks, then they just get removed from all the other parts of the measures. And the only place they'll show up is in the early dropout rate. If your early dropout rate is very high, then this is perhaps suggesting that learners are not getting the right advice and they're taking programs that are not suitable to them and having to move very quickly. So we have the learners at the 8-week point, then we have the learners completing their AS and the AS completion rate, which is based on the learners at the 8-week point. After that, we have the retention rate. So this is the progression from the AS onto the second year into year 13. However, it's just whether they are still taking their A levels in year 13. So if a learner drops down from 4 AS to 3 A levels, they still count as a continuer in this column. Then we have the A2 completion rate, which is whether a learner reached the end of their study, but it's not whether they achieved any of their qualifications. You can complete your program having not achieved any of your A levels. It's a little bit confusing, all the different cohorts. So this little marker here, cohort, tells you what is being compared to. So here it's cohort H, because the number of A2 learners achieving 3 or more A2 is based on this H, the number of learners completing. So we have the early dropout rate, which is based on starters, the AS completion rate based on 8 weeks, and so on. And then the grades here, which are based on the people achieving 3 or more Cs, for example, out of all the people who completed their A2. However, we do have an additional table, which is our 2-year measures. So this is looking at the number of learners who came out with 3 A levels at particular grades out of all the people who started their AS at 8 weeks. So here, if an outcome is low, it could mean that lots of learners are not passing their exams, but it could mean that they're actually dropping out earlier, and that would show up here. As a little example of this, I've got a question. Perhaps we could have thumbs up in the React button. What I'd like to know is, do you think that more male learners or female learners achieved 3 A stars at A level nationally in this column here? So perhaps if you could give a thumbs up if you think it's more male learners achieving 3 A stars. or more female learners? Okay. It's a trick question. It's actually equal for both of them. But it's different how it's equal. So for male learners who took the exams were more likely to achieve 3A stars. However, male learners were less likely to have reached the end of their course and completed it to be in that position in the first place. Okay, moving on. So this is going to be new for 22-23, is we have a table for learners who took their AS elsewhere, because the previous table was a 2-year measure, learners who started their AS levels and went on to A2, and it didn't have a space for learners at your school who took their AS levels elsewhere. So now we have a table especially for those learners, and it'll be based on their achievements for the learners who are 8 weeks into their A2 level, and it's just their A2 level outcomes. There won't be any AS level outcomes included here. So those are the general education reports. We also want to have one for vocational programs. These are programs aiming for a particular vocational focus. So for example, construction, and all of the qualifications will be aimed around supporting that aim instead of having a mix of different subject areas. There are a couple of differences in the vocational achievement report to reflect the fact that these are more flexible with lots of different routes. So for example, these are on a 1-year basis, not a 2-year basis. Obviously, we'd still like you to consider what happens to your learners going from year 1 to year 2, but these reports just show it on a 1-year basis. And then the other thing is, because there are so many different types of grade outcome, we don't have any particular grade outcomes in these reports. We just have the number of 6 activities that were successfully completed. So we have here the number of terminated activities. This is number of activities and courses that were ended, including completions and non-completions. These are the main vocational qualifications the learner was studying. There might be more than one learner. It's generally worked out as 1.2 qualifications per learner. And then we have the success rate, which is how many of these activities were completed as part of a program that was achieved. Moving on from the vocational, we also have one for the Welsh back. This will be changed in future years with the new advanced skills baccalaureate that's being introduced. But for now, it's still a 2-year measure. So learners start in their Welsh back in 1 year and then what they achieve in the end. And there are 2 components to it. We have the skills challenge certificate, the graded standalone certificate, and we have the overall Welsh back, which is pass and fail and has some qualification requirements. There were around 11,900 learners who passed the skills challenge certificate last year, and about 10,500 of them got the overall Welsh back. So finally, those were all the program measures. We also have information on the courses. The courses, they work a little bit differently. We show all of the courses taken, whatever program they're taken as part of. So if you did an AS course in a part-time program or as part of a vocational program, it's still going to show up on these reports. We do have the 2 years, the AS level and the A level, but the grades work a little bit differently here. They're not 2-year measures, they're only looking at the achievement for the A2 level learners. And the reason for this is that if a learner takes 4 ASs and drops 1 for A level, we don't want that to be penalised here. So if they don't start their A level, then it won't affect the achievement rate. And the grades that we show are cumulative. That just catches people out sometimes. So if you have achieved 3 Cs, you've also achieved 3 Ds and at least 3 Es at A level. In the previous table, we had those grey rows for the national outcomes. In here, it's the coloured columns where we have the completion rate and the retention rate and so on. You'll also notice that we have these demographic benchmarks. which I will explain now. So that benchmarks have been developed over the last couple of years. The idea for these is that they contextualize your results based on the characteristics of your learners. The biggest factors being their prior attainment, their absence rates in year 11, and whether they were ever eligible for free school meals during the pre-16 secondary school period. They were developed with London Economics, and this is what they look like for the programs. So this is the General Education Program benchmark. First thing to look at is that we don't include all the learners here. It's only the learners who we have a secondary school record for. So for example, if you had a learner who did their secondary school GCSEs in England, then they won't be included in your benchmarks. If they studied somewhere else in Wales, we probably have managed to match their secondary school record, but we'll tell you how many of your learners we've actually managed to match. The way the benchmarks work is we have the national outcome. So this is the unadjusted national outcome, the percentage of learners in Wales who achieved, in this case, 3 Cs. And then we have the demographic benchmark, which is adjusting the national outcome based on the characteristics of your learners. So for this school, it looks like, again, it's a made up example, but they have learners who have a lower prior attainment than is their national average. So their demographic benchmark is lower perhaps. And then finally, the blue dot is your actual unadjusted outcome. So here we can see for this provider that their outcome was quite a bit lower than the national outcome. But when you take into account the learners they were having, who perhaps had a higher experience of deprivation, it's a fairly reasonable outcome. Okay, and are there any questions about the benchmarks? No? Okay. This is a small note, so we're making a change in this year to transfers. It's a very small change. It's like a fraction of a percentage point in the measures. But previously, we treated all transfers as a non-continuation. This year, we're going to be changing that a little bit. If we can see that a learner went to a program that was the same level or higher than the program they transferred away from, and we can see that in the record, then we will no longer count them as non-continuation. We'll remove them from the measures entirely. We have a matched education dataset that allows us to track learners across schools and colleges and apprenticeship providers. So if they transfer to another provider, we can see what program they were doing there. And there's going to be a new table in the measures that just shows which transfers have been allowed. So the final thing that I want to talk about is the backing data, which gets sent alongside the main achievement measures report. So you'll receive 2 spreadsheets. One is the achievement measures and one is the backing data. The backing data is just there to for more technical uses to help you understand what's going on in the measures. So if you want to see how a particular learner was counted in the measures, then you can look at the backing data, and the backing data will show you that. This is an example of the backing data for general education program measures. Again, a made up example. So what you can see is that we have 5 learners here, but one of the learners had 2 A-level programs. And what happened was that they transferred in January and they essentially dropped 1 A-level from their A-level program. The backing data then also shows you how they're counted in the measures. So again, we've got the same 5 learners from the previous table, and you can see how they're recorded. So for example, this learner here was recorded as not completing their A2. This learner achieved 3 or more Bs at A level. This is the learner who had the 2 programs, and one of their A2 programs has been removed from the record, and we just used the one that they transferred to. And you can see that they achieved 3 or more A2s at any grade. And finally, the backend data allows you to dig in even deeper than that if you want, so you can actually look at the actual courses that the learner took and how we counted those. So this is all the courses taken by one particular learner, and this is how they're counted towards the measures. So you can see that this maths GCSE is not counted in the measures, whereas this extended certificate in construction and built environment is, and it's being treated as equivalent to a C at A level. This is based on the performance points which are assigned to each qualification for a particular grade. The skills challenge certificate you can see is counted here, and the Welsh back is not. So that's the rough summary of how the achievement measures work. Does anyone have any questions?
Appreciate there's a lot of information for you to take in, but I think that hopefully it gives you a flavour of how the measures are calculated, and I think it's important for you to go away and look at your own data in respect of this presentation. Also, there is guidance about how to interpret the report. So basically, what Thomas has just gone through is in a report, which is part of the hub playlist that we have. So the link to the playlist is there, and I can circulate the slides after this meeting. So, you know, I think it is important for you to go away and as I say, if there are things then that are specific to you that you don't understand, or you can't sort of make head or tail of in your own data, then please feel free to email us on that email address, and then we'll come back and help you as much as we possibly can. So, right, there's a question about if there are comments in the backing data such as quads not matching the database, how can we correct this? Unfortunately, you can't, because it's based on the information that's been submitted as part of the post-16 collection, which will have been done in the previous October. So we can't make any changes to it once that data has been submitted to us. And which, again, it shows the importance, I think, of using those the DEWI validation summary reports to make sure the information that you're submitting to us is as accurate as you can possibly make it.
But the two things that you can do as an action are, so first of all, if you think that there is maybe something incorrect about that, you can get in contact with us, and then we can look into that for next year. And then it's just important to make sure that you are that the quads that you're submitting are correct next year, so that the same mistake doesn't happen again if it was perhaps an incorrect quad code.
Great, thanks Lucy for that question. Are there any other questions? Feel free to put in the chat or unmute. And I know, as Bethan said, there's a lot of information, and until you've got all that data in front of you, it might feel a lot to take on. So if there isn't any other questions, you're going to gain 30 minutes of your life back.
Yeah.
I think you were going to have today. So maybe, you know, have an option to get in and have a look, or locate that data, or speak to your senior leadership team regarding the DEWI data and the download that's currently sitting with them. There's just something going to the chat, so I'll just check the question.
If you can share the recording with us, Emma, if that's okay, I can add it as a link to on the hub playlist, so it's all in one place then, because there's a wealth of information on that playlist. It links you to sort of more detailed explanatory notes about what parts of the post-16 collection the data comes from, which fields, and all of that. It also gives you links to where you can find the national data, and all of the background information on how we've got to where we have with the measures. So it has got a lot of information there, and I can sort of we can make sure it's all in one place then. And I'll share these slides with you as well, so that they can be circulated, because I think there's some really helpful sort of pointers in there in terms of what the different columns and rows reflect within the spreadsheet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that little top tip that Thomas gave us about what column it relates to, the H in bracket, is something probably I didn't know. So I'm really grateful for those top tips. So thank you very much. But great. So is there anything else, Gareth, that you think you want to add there?
That's great. Thank you.
All sorted. Brilliant. Well, thank you. You got a little bit more of your day back. Thanks so much to Beth and Thomas for a really detailed explanation there. And as they said, thank you in advance for offering to support our teachers throughout the rest of the year with this.
No problem. Nice to see you all. Bye.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.